Right, so I've just finished watching live the first real presentation on World of Warcraft from Blizzcon as delivered by the new game director Ion Hazzikostas. So what I'm going to do in this video, a few things. First of all, it's just an initial reaction. I've been typing away as he's been doing it. I'm just going to go through some of the points that were brought up with some commentary. I'll probably then portion it out into more detailed looks at some of the things over the coming week. But another little idea I had was what I will do is, as well as there's stuff in here to discuss, there's also going to be a Q&A tomorrow, but it's going to be quite late on in the UK because it's in the afternoon in America, so it'll be quite late on here. But on Sunday, I'm going to do a stream where I think what we can do is discuss some of the things that have been brought up with regards to BlizzCon, because we've already had this presentation. We'll have also had the Q&A by then. I'm just going to do some streaming. I'll probably just be, playing about, mucking about in game. So if anyone would like to join me then, we can actually discuss blow by blow some of the things that have come up. It won't be, I know a lot of people watch me stream like Retribution Paladin. It won't be to answer Retribution Paladin questions as such, unless of course it's related to some of the things that come up here. It's just an overall, a general Legion thing. So that will be Sunday, 6th of November at 7 PM UK time. I understand there'll be some people who'll be raiding at that time. There'll be people who can't really make it. But if you do want to join in, I'm just going to be gaming on there. Throw some comments in and we'll discuss what's come up. That might be quite interesting, just for a couple of hours or however long it takes. So, first of all, I have to say Ion Hazzikostas came across really well. I have noted he does seem to have improved a lot. But I think there's now a distinction between how he is on stage. Now, BlizzCon, of course, he was very positive. He mixed it. He came across very well. Some good humour in there. Very approachable. Very friendly. I would like to see him have more of that sort of approach in the Q&As. I think with the Q&As, he sometimes goes a little bit defensive because, of course, there's going to be questions asked. Whereas here, of course, he knows that everything's positive. He's given us lots of content. He actually tweeted before it went live, saying, be warned, there's going to be lots of content being discussed here. And there is, as was expected, of course, because we know they've put great store in the fact that there's going to be content, rapid-fire content in Legion, in complete contrast to Warlords of Draenor. I mean, in previous expansions, they've had some stick because there's been that content drought at the end of the expansion. But Warlords of Draenor, there was content drought throughout the expansion for a lot of people. So that's very much not the case now. A lot of people were asking the question, are they going to be able to keep it up throughout the whole of Legion? Well, the answer was always going to be yes, because they had to, and they knew they had to. So they are going to. So let's discuss some of this. First of all, they've talked about the whole concept of patches is going to change a little bit. They said that in the past, sometimes something wasn't quite ready with a patch, so they delayed it, they pushed it back. Now, this is good in a way because it means that we know that with Blizzard, it's quality stuff that comes out. I've played some other MMOs and some other games with like DLC and stuff like that, and it's not always good quality. They're sticking to a timetable, and sometimes they're a bit over-ambitious, and then they put it out anyway, and it's actually not that good. Blizzard tend not to do that. That's not to say there are never any bugs. You're always going to get a few bugs, but it's not that bad, and they usually get onto them quite quickly. But the content is good quality. So how do they tally those two things? How do they make sure that they're not pushing patches back, but at the same time also making sure the quality comes out? What they've said, it seems to be like a build, like a Lego style approach. You didn't use that term, that's sort of my term. In other words, it's built up of sections, and if some aspect of a patch isn't ready to go yet, they bring out the rest. And that bit of content that wasn't quite ready gets put back to a later one. So they can still bring out the patches on a regular basis. The other thing he said, because I'm not going to necessarily go in the order he was talking about things, is that they're going to emphasize how rapid fire it is, because he says there's going to be always something up on the PTR. So as soon as BlizzCon, because at the moment we've just had patch 7.1 come out, as soon as BlizzCon finishes, so I assume that means next week, we're going to have 7.1.5 content going up on the PTR, which I'm going to go through. I'm going to talk about that. He went through what's going to come in 7.1.5 as well as 7.2. And he said as soon as 7.1.5 patch PTR is done with and the patch has come out, it'll be 7.2 on the PTR. So it's like every time a new patch is ready and it's come out, the next patch will be on the PTR. That's how it's going to dovetail. So, yeah, rapid fire content. He, again, quite a good human, said apologies to anyone who hates content because, yeah. So what is coming in 7.1.5? Well, first of all, on the time walking front, we're going to get Mists of Pandaria dungeons. So the old mop dungeons are coming back. Now, he did say that it feels right to bring time walking dungeons from anything other than the most immediately previous expansion. So in other words, we're not going to see time walking WoD dungeons in Legion, but up to mop is fine because you don't want to redo the ones you've just been doing, which seems fair enough to me. So yeah, we're going to get mop dungeons for time walking when 7.1.5 comes out. And this was an example of what he called evergreen content. It's the sort of stuff they could have brought out at any time. So they're bringing it out in 7.1.5. They're also re-bringing out the Brawlers Guild. Now, they did shut down the Brawlers Guild for Legion because they wanted to do something different with it. They noted the Brawlers Guild came in MOP. It was an original feature in MOP. And they redid it for WoD, but it was just the same content as they noted, just retuned. So what they want to do is do something a little bit different. It does sound like they're doing something different. I didn't really get into Brawlers Guild myself. I did a little bit just out of curiosity. But it does sound a lot more interesting. So first of all, there's going to be new encounters in there. That's a given. If you're going to redo something, of course, you need to do that. But there are interesting features as well. They noted that in Brawlers Guild, of course, you've got someone there, and then you've got everyone else queuing for their turn to get in. And they might be watching they might be cheering the person on, they might be jeering at them or something like that. Every now and then, a raid boss will come up, and everyone who's there watching and queuing up will get sucked in. So all of a sudden, instead of a solo affair, you're going to find yourself cooperating with other people on this raid type boss, and of course get the rewards from that if you're successful. Now that sounds really interesting, but because it's a random chance, it doesn't sound like it's something that's triggered by just having a lot of people there. So I don't think it's the sort of thing where you can just get lots of guildies there to crowd it in the hope that it will trigger. It does sound random, so it does sound like it will be complete pug. Now that sounds really interesting. Also on the social side of it, they talked about they're introducing something called Brawlers Gold. Now this will allow you to get things, it'll allow you to get things such as shirts and stuff like that. There's also going to be a Basilisk mount available through the Brawlers Guild. But also you can use this gold for things that will benefit other people, you as well as everyone else around you. Such as, for example, being able to station a graveyard really close by so you don't have a long run back. And various features like that. After Brawlers Guild, he talked about what they call micro holidays. So we have the seasonal content. We know about that, like the Hallows Eve we've just sort of had. And that's that's content that comes out a certain time of year. It lasts a week or two. And you save up currency, you can get pets and mounts and stuff that achievement hunters will definitely be after. So then what he talked about was micro holidays, which are 1 or 2 day events where you don't get anything that you need. There's nothing that will give you an achievement. There's no pets, there's no mounts or anything like that. It's just an event that will pop up for a day or two, just for a bit of fun, just to change the pace a little bit. He gave 4 examples. I'll go through 3 of them. 3 of them sounded really good. The first one is Ankiraj Remembrance Day. And this will be set on January the 22nd, which back in, I suppose that would have been 2006, was the date when the gates of Ankiraj were first opened in the world. For those who don't know, Ankiraj had to be opened on your server. So it didn't open up on all servers at the same time because the server had to do various tasks to get it to open, which include turning in certain resources and things like that. So what's going to happen on this particular day is they're going to have those sort of turning type events available. And there'll be a competition between the Alliance and the Horde. And at the end of this Remembrance Day, whichever faction has turned in the most resources, they will get their faction banner on Anchorage, draped over Anchorage, for the rest of the year until the following Anchorage Remembrance Day a year later. So there's nothing personal you're going to get out of it, no achievements or anything. It's just a little bit of kudos in a zone that you wouldn't go to at any other time anyway. But still, it's just a nice little event that you can take part in if you would like to do that. The next one was Volunteer Guard Day. This might appeal to a lot of people. So on this particular day, you can go to a guard in Stormwind or Orgrimmar. He didn't say about other cities. I don't know whether it applies to other cities as well, but he mentioned Stormwind and Orgrimmar. And you can salute a guard on patrol, and you will adopt their appearance and be able to go on patrol. Whether there's any little events that will occur when you're on patrol, I don't know. I'm sure there will be, otherwise it would be a bit boring. But again, just as before, there's no achievements or anything like that. It's just a little bit of fun. And the third one that appealed, I think, it would certainly appeal to a lot of people, is the hatching of the hippogriffs. So this is like one day in the year when all the hippogriffs hatch, and you can go and witness this event. And you might even get a little, I suppose you'd call them a hippogriff chick, in a Pepe style thing. So it just follows you around or something like that. It's not a pet or anything like that. So it's nothing for achievements. But just, again, another little bit of interest there. So that's it in terms of sort of the what you might call the casual content there. He did then go on to class abilities. Now, of course, you know, my channel class abilities is going to be a real big thing. So I'm certainly going to do a detailed video on this at point. But I'm just going to go through now what he said and a quick reaction. So this, I mean, we've already noted that they're doing things a little differently. In fact, a lot differently to every other expansion. We haven't had a situation like this since Vanilla, which wasn't, of course, an expansion. Whereby what they've said is they feel like, you know, bugs are largely sorted. They've done the little class tuning. So now they're ready to basically monkey about with the classes. They're actually going to go in and change the way abilities work. This is potentially good or bad, depending on how it's handled. I have to confess, I'm a little nervous about them doing this mid-expansion. But first of all, let's see what they're going to do. So what they've noted down is there are certain talent choices that seem to be essential. You basically must take this talent choice. Yes, that's the case. And there are other talents that are completely worthless. So it might be on a particular row. You've got two talents you can sort of choose between, but one of them don't ever choose it. So they've noted that there's some rows there's a talent that you absolutely have to take. In another row, it might be that two are okay, but the other one is not. And my little gripe on this one, it's actually a fairly major gripe, is in each, I certainly know for Retribution Paladin, that's the one I know the best. I know Demon Hunter, Havoc Demon Hunter pretty well as well. But certainly for Ret Paladin, all the ones that are useless and that people don't take are all the ones that we said half a year ago were useless and that people won't take. So to now come around to going, oh yeah, we need to change it, is a bit, it just does my head in when that sort of feedback's ignored. But anyway, we'll forget about that. So what they're going to do, they said, in some cases it's just a tuning issue. They'll just retune. In some cases, it will need reworking. Now that is one area of concern for me, because as soon as you rework an ability, if you get it wrong, you can actually badly affect a particular class. Not just a spec, but a class. But also remember, all you have to do is knacker a spec now, even for pure DPS class, say, and you cause real problems. Because remember, although it is reasonable to be able to keep up all your artifacts if you needed to, it's harder for Druid, of course, much easier for Demon Hunter, but easy to keep up with all your artifacts. You'll not be that far behind if you just keep them all on an even keel and put artifact power equally into all of them. But a lot of people don't. A lot of people just went gung-ho for one. And if you bugger that spec, and you can bugger the spec just by making another spec much more powerful, by the way. You don't have to do anything to nerf that spec. You might just make another one more powerful that you have no artifact power in. I mean, of course, artifact knowledge means you might be able to catch up to it in a reasonable amount of time. But you do have to be a little bit careful. But in theory, the concept of reworking talents that are currently useless is a good idea. I just wish they'd done it during beta, before people made firm decisions about what class or spec to play. And it wasn't something that they can actually honestly say was unpredictable, that they needed the live data to be able to see it. No, they didn't. But anyway, moaning over. Actually, there's going to be another moan in a minute, so I'm not going to say moaning over just yet. Now, the other thing they've said, and again, this is both good news, but could be worrying, is they noted that obviously in Legion, they've pruned a lot of utility away from classes. Now, I've noted before that in an almost resigned way, the problem is if you got rid of all utility from DPS classes and only let healers and tanks had it, say, that would sort of be okay. But some DPS classes retained very good utility and others lost it completely, and some, like me, ended up with fairly crap ones that's useful every now and then. But you create a situation where the one with not much good utility is not really going to be all that desirable, and the ones with really good utility is, especially in dungeons. And now that they've made dungeons actually competitive things to be in, you have someone with something like, if you're going to be really pushing the high levels, the really tight stuff, you're going to have someone with heroism there. So that means you're going to take a shaman, a mage, or a hunter. You've got to. You've absolutely got to. And now there's another one. So what they said is they're going to bring back some of that utility. Now, some people will cheer that. Some people think that's absolutely great. But again, the worry is, and it is great, it is good. The worry is that if it's unequal, and it will be unequal by the sounds of it, you create a situation where some people will win, some people will lose, and they've chosen their class and spec to play in Legion. I will always play the one I first, but some people will have picked their class and spec based on how it was at the start of the expansion, on the understanding that, like with every other expansion since, or, I mean, TBC, something's changed, that it's largely going to be untouched. Yes, things are going to be retuned, but the abilities are sort of going to be the abilities. And, of course, that's out the window in Legion. So, if we're going to get new abilities during an expansion, in the middle of an expansion, that's a very different ballgame. So they do have to, I think, tread carefully. But in terms of the utility we know is returning, Hunter Traps are coming back. That's, you know, again, on the Class Fantasy banner. But one really interesting one is Rogues are getting the Shroud of Concealment back. That is the mass stealth, the one you can do on your whole party. Initially, my reaction to that was, ooh, you're almost making Rogues essential in a 5-man dungeon group if you want to push the hard stuff. Now, what may balance it a little bit is the fact that you need, in these Mythic Plus timed runs, a certain amount of trash to be able to complete it. You can't just disappear past all the trash. And it may also be that some of the trickier trash can see through stealth anyway, so that'll prevent that. So it might actually not be too bad. So initially I was thinking, but then I sort of thought, so that may be okay. But it is a classic example of the sort of thing where you have to tread very carefully. Because if someone comes up with a route through a tricky dungeon especially, and whenever there's timed dungeons, a more efficient route is always good, and someone comes up with a great route to go through, but it relies on Shroud of Concealment, then you start to think, they shouldn't really be doing that. But then you could also argue, I suppose, that if such a route existed, we have the, what's it called now, the Fjarn's Gargle Potion for invisibility anyway. So, you know, the same people on that same route could just take invisibility pots, I suppose. So I don't think that one would be too bad. But I will just say they do need to think very, very carefully about that. But I'll talk about that in more detail later. Some really good news, or potentially good news, for people who want to do catch-up, want to do alt. At the moment, of course, I mean, I've now got several characters at level cap. If I just go through, I've got my Havoc Demon Hunter, which I use for split raids. Decent gear, 855, but I haven't used it since I stopped doing split raids. I've got my Death Knight, who is my Herbalist, also minor, but Herbalist, essentially. I've got my Monk, who's my Alchemist. I'm also going to have a Hunter on the way. I haven't been levelling up alts as much as I did in WoD because we've got stuff to do. But when I have leveled these up, you know, you sort of... I'm put off wanting to do world quests on them all. I'm put off wanting to farm order resources and artifact knowledge and all the rest of it. But I have enough order resources so that I can keep ticking over my artifact knowledge. So I'll get to a certain point at one time where my artifact knowledge is quite high, and I'll just go, do you know what? I can get loads of traits here and just go artifacts, power hunting, and get my weapons skilled up really quickly. So what they've said is to help this out for people who are doing alts later on, or maybe just joining the game later on, that you'll be able to, rather than wait, because the artifact knowledge takes less time now. So if you to start with, if you were leveling up in the first week, you wait 5 days between each one, and then it went down to 4 days, and then 3 days, 2 days. But you're still waiting. There's still a wait. So what they're going to say is you can purchase artifact knowledge levels with order resources. Now, of course, it's not all singing and dancing. It's not as good as if it was gold. Well, it's better. We don't want them to do it for gold. But for some people, it'll not be as easy as if it was gold. Because, of course, you have uses for order resources as well when you've just leveled an out, because you want that for your order hall upgrade. So it's a case of deciding which is more important. And if you decide you want to spend it on artifact knowledge to bung your weapon up really quickly, then that's what you can do. So it's not hideously overpowered, because there are pulls on the order resources until you've sort of got everything anyway. But it's definitely helpful. So that's a really good feature. So that's 7.1.5, which, remember, is not a major content patch as such, but it has got new content in it, and it's got new features. So then after that, and by this point, remember, we'll have done Trial of Valor's coming out next week anyway. We'll have also done Nighthold, because that's sort of part of patch 7.1. We will be ready for patch 7.2. And what is a surprise to no one is that it's the Tomb of Sargeras. That is the raid we're going into. We sort of knew that. You know, I talked some time ago. There were one of two things they could, because we know there's going to be 3 tiers. There was one of 2 things they could do for the final tier. And it is one of the 2, because that was fairly predictable. But yeah, and it is called patch 7.2, the Tomb of Sargeras. So first of all, there's going to be a new faction, and it's going to be called the Armies of Legionfall, which is made up of all the order halls, all our class halls. So we are one of the leaders of the Armies of Legionfall. So quite why we don't start off exalted is beyond me, seeing as we are one of the faction leaders of this thing. But whatever. It sounds weird, doesn't it? Because they actually said, yeah, we're going to be one of the leaders of this thing, because this is circumventing the whole Alliance Horde thing. Because the idea is we are going back to the Broken Shore, where the Alliance and Horde Alliance, sounds weird that, doesn't it? But, you know, they teamed up, the Alliance and Horde, and then completely fluffed it when the Horde buggered off, got ambushed and buggered off, and left the Alliance in the shit. Unfortunately, I can say we now, because I'm back to Alliance. I started off the expansion as Horde, but I'm now Alliance. We lost our king instead of that bloody gnome. They actually got the gnome to look cool and didn't die. Blizzard, really? Really? You're stepping over lines here. But, so that sort of failed. So the Horde and Alliance are at each other's throats. They're not going to work together again. So it's the class order halls who are rising above petty faction rivalry. The idea is to come together, and they are the ones who are actually pushing in to this thing. So yeah, it sounds really weird that we are one of the leaders of it, and yeah, we're going to have to work up our reputation with this thing that we are a leader of. Not quite sure how that works. Never mind. So some of the things we'll be doing, we'll be building stuff, staging grounds, buildings, and we'll get a choice of them. I'm not quite sure how that's going to work in terms of phasing, but obviously the technology's really come on for that. So we as individual players, I suppose the Broken Shore will look very different to one player compared to another, because we are going to decide how we do that assault. What Watcher did is he compared it to the assault on Icecrown in Wrath, where it was all set up, you know, it was Blizzard that added each little bit of the sort of gradual siege of Icecrown. Whereas now it's going to be us making decisions, and depending on our decisions, depends on the various bonuses and unlocks various features, new world quests and stuff like that, that comes with it. So we have a real choice in that regard. So, yeah, it must well be that Broken Shore will look different to different people. I'm not quite sure how that works out for grouping. Maybe it's a bit like when you group with someone with garrisons things, in that it's the leader that determines what it'll actually look like. That has some scope for some interest there. But there were no real details on that just yet. Hopefully more details to come at some point. There's also going to be Legion assaults in the same sort of style, but with a difference to the pre-Legion events we were getting. Now, in those pre-Legion events, we were having assaults via the Legion ships on various parts of Azeroth. This time, it's going to be on the various zones of the Broken Shore, so like High Mount and Stormheim, Asuna. So we'll get involved in those. Same sort of thing, except instead of just going around randomly taking out demonic lieutenants, it's in the form of world quests. Sort of finishes off with a big demon boss, just like in the pre-Legion stuff. But then there's another stage after it. There's a 3-man scenario where we say, right, we've sorted out the assault, we've dealt with it now. Oh, look, there's a ship up there. We're going up there and giving them a good kick in. So we're going to get on our flying mounts, because they did say flying's going to come halfway through the expansion. Again, surprised to know one that's going to come in 7.2, but was confirmed. Flying mounts are going to come in 7.2, so we'll be flying up there. 3-man scenario. So if you're in, and there'll be rewards for it, of course. So if you're interested in those and you've got a group of 3 and you want to do that, you get yourself to that invasion site, do the stuff, get the thing dealt with, up off ski. Now, on the issue of flying, how it works out, again, no surprise, no news on that one. We're going to do a series of outdoor-related exploration and quests and stuff like that on the Broken Shore, just like we did for the first level of Pathfinder on the Broken Isle, the rest of the Broken Isles. But there's a little twist. There was a surprising bit of news. In that, there's a whole host of class-specific epic mounts coming. And they showed all of these. The Paladin one looks decent, but I didn't see it flying, so I don't know what it looks like flying. The Shaman one looks absolutely awesome. I cannot... I want to level my Shaman before 7.2. I want that mount. And of course, only my Shaman characters will be able to fly it. It is class specific. It looks so awesome. It's fantastic. On the other end of the scale, I have to say, now when it comes to demons, I didn't say demons. I said druids. That's what I said. You just thought I said demons. When it comes to druids, I remember when I first started a druid character in vanilla. It wasn't my first, of course. Paladin was my first, but I did a druid at some point during vanilla. And I remember doing the quest for seal form, and I turned into a seal, and I had a look at it, and it scared the shit out of me. It's just deranged. And even then, they've changed it, they've improved the graphics and stuff, it still looks like it's dropped a chromosome. This thing is not right in the head. And I thought, they can't make anything look scarier than that. But then I saw what they've got for the epic druid flag. It's sort of like this owl form, but it just looks goofy as hell. But of course, that is just this man's opinion. And I don't really play a druid much. It'll be it's not exactly one of the first characters I'll be leveling, so it doesn't really matter, I suppose. But it just looks weird as hell. And then some of the ones in between are sort of okay. I'm actually not, the Death Knight one sort of looks good, but doesn't quite do it for me Death Knighty wise. It looks all right. The Warrior one looks pretty ugly, but it suits the Warrior. It's very suitable. It's like a Proto Drake, but with a big old Deathwing type face mask on it. There are some really nice ones. I'll need to get some images. And but yeah, we get class specific mounts again. Now, speaking of class-specific stuff, the next artifact skin, we've already seen some of these. Basically, when Alpha and Beta were going on, sort of things were data mined. So we know we have 4 looks for our artifact that we can see in our order hall. They're available to us. There's a 5th hidden one, which most people have sort of found out how to do by now. And some people will have it and some people won't. And then we always knew there was going to be a 6th one or a 2nd hidden one. But that's not in the game yet. But it's going to be in the game, and they've announced how we're going to find it. So it's not just another hidden one where we have to go out and try and find what random thing we do. It's going to be based on a class quest line, which is another... It's like Legion is bringing us all the things we've asked for that have been in the game before and that we've missed. And class quests have been one of them. So there's going to be a classed quest line to unlock this final skin. And it's going to be a tough one. And they actually likened it to the Warlock Greenfire in MOP or the Molten Core Priest and Hunter class quests in Vanilla. In other words, it's going to be a test of your skill. So what they're basically saying is if you see someone with this skin, you know they're a good player. They know their class because they've had to complete something challenging for their class to be able to do it. So that's how we're going to unlock that one if you're interested. Unfortunately for me, it's the Shattered Ashbringer, and I've only just got the Ashbringer after over 10 years of waiting. Why would I want to break it? But I will do the quest, even though I won't use the skin, because, of course, why wouldn't I? Now, when it comes to this sort of PvE content, it's again another favourite of mine. The Tomb of Sargeras itself is going to be 2 instances. There's going to be a raid part, and there's going to be a dungeon part. The dungeon part is upwards in the tower. The idea is you do the dungeon. It's not an attunement, but story-wise, you're doing the dungeon. You're going to use one of the Pillars of Creation to unlock the tomb, the downstairs bit, which is the raid which you go into. It's not, as I say, it's not an attunement, just story-wise. You do the upper bit before you do the lower bit. Now, the raid itself contains 9 bosses. The last couple sound really interesting. There's some of them, obviously, I'm sure they will be interesting encounters, but in terms of who they are. Now, the last one will come as no surprise to anyone, Kil'jaeden. Very predictable, a little bit disappointing, but it just had to be done. It was always going to be Kil'jaeden. Now, what appears to be the penultimate boss is sort of surprising, because it's basically a sort of form of the Avatar of Sargeras. Now, remembering that the Tomb of Sargeras itself is not the literal Tomb of Sargeras, he's still alive and kicking, but his avatar was on Azeroth a long time ago, and Aegwynn, who is Medivh's mother, or was, battled him, or this avatar, and locked it in the Tomb of Sargeras. And then, of course, she got sort of corrupted by his spirit. Then, so this husk of the Avatar of Sargeras, which apparently still has a little bit of spark of Sargeras in it, is still down there, and we're going to have to battle him. So we're sort of fighting Sargeras in a way with this one. Now, in terms of group PvE, other interesting news. So first of all, Karazhan, which at the moment is sort of Mythic. You can't really do it as Mythic Plus because it's too big. But there you are going to be able to, because what they're going to do in patch 7.2, this isn't 7.1.5, but 7.2, they're going to split it up into 2 bits. So that way it opens itself up to looking for dungeon, normal and heroic version of it, because it'll be 2 separate dungeons. And you will then be able to do Mythic Plus versions of it, again, the 2 separate parts. So it's like 2 new dungeons in a way, not new, but you know what I mean. So it opens it up to the other difficulty levels. Speaking of which, they're going to do another couple of things. First of all, they're going to increase the difficulty of the current dungeons, the dungeons we have now, the 10 dungeons, which includes of the Mythic Plus, to keep it in line and keep it relevant. So the overall difficulty will increase. I'm not sure how that's going to work for people who will just be freshly dinged halfway through the expansion. That wasn't really explained. But again, I'm sure there's obviously a plan for that. But yeah, they're going to up the difficulty of those to keep it all relevant. And, I mean, you know, that's another thing I sort of glossed over there, that's something that people have asked for. In terms of the Tomb of Sargeras dungeon, I mean, if you look at it, what is it? It's a new dungeon halfway through the expansion. And people have been asking for that. We didn't get it in WoD. We didn't get it in MoP. We haven't had this since Cataclysm. And the ones in Cataclysm were a little bit disappointing as well. But at least we had new dungeons. Now, the only thing I will say, it's a little disappointing we're only getting 1. Because I know we've had Karazhan as well. But Karazhan is really there to cater for people who wanted these like small-scale raid. The sort of people who traditionally before would have wanted 10-man hard mode raiding. This sort of caters for that. But of course, you could argue the fact they're going to split it up into 2 means that in effect, by the 7.2, we will have had 3 new dungeons that weren't there at launch. So I suppose that's a decent compromise. I'd have still liked another one. But, you know, I think we'll take what we can get. And as long as it's really good, as long as it's an entertaining instance and one that people will love, then I think fair enough on that one. I would say fair enough. Now, last couple of bits. The artifact itself is going to be expanded. There's going to be a new quest line that continues the quest of the artifact. And it's going to, if you've got an advanced artifact, you need to have already advanced your artifact. If it is advanced at this point, you will be able to unlock 15 further trait points on your artifact, which will include another, like a fourth major trait. So that will be interesting. Again, so that basically means there'll be some effectively new abilities, because these major traits often, not always, but often completely change the way an ability works. So that will mean changing the way the particular spec or class works. But you sort of get that anyway with tier bonuses. So, but yeah, they had talked before about making artifact power remain useful throughout the expansion. I was wondering if they were thinking in terms of giving it other uses. So once we've filled up our artifact, that we have some other use for it. Maybe this is the other use for it, that actually they're just expanding the artifact. So yes, we'll also have access to new knowledge levels. So the artifact itself is going to be continued in 7.2. So if you've got it all completed by then, there'll be more to do. You won't have finished yet. Last few bits. All right, yes. On the last sort of thing, really, on Mythic Plus, a couple of things, really. Mythic Plus Dungeons, there's going to be some new affixes. The one that was showcased was bursting. This is the idea that all mobs, when they die, all of them, they will burst, as the name suggests, providing you with a dot that does 20% of your health over 4 seconds. He likened it to the Icas on Il'gynoth, the raid boss in Emerald Nightmare. So this will have serious repercussions for the time at which you can do a dungeon, of course, because you can't just go in and AoE the crap out of everything. I mean, there is Berserk already sort of stops you doing that, but this one, this one's going to hurt everyone, not just the tank. Because, yeah, 20% over 4 seconds. That's 5% per mob, presumably, per second. Ooh. Oh my god, you can imagine some dungeons being really... Like, Maw of Souls is probably less annoying. There's the dogs where you certainly can't do a big pull. But some dungeons where there's... Blackrock Hold, that's going to be a nightmare, isn't it? Oh my god. So that'll be an interesting one. But yeah, there's some more affixes coming in as well. And then... when we're done with 7.2, they said there'll be a 7.2.5, so that'll again be not new raid content, but new stuff. There'll be new stuff in there, much in line with what they've got. They haven't said what it is, but they don't really need to. I think at this point we can sort of give them the nod that yes, they are coming up with regular content, because we've had plenty of stuff to do. I would even argue they didn't need to bring 7.1 out as early as they did, but they have done. 7.1.5, the PTR is going up next week, so that's presumably coming soon in the new year, I would guess. I'm not sure they'd do it round about Christmas. I would think afterwards, surely. Then 7.2, of course, we talked about. There's going to be 7.2.5. We sort of know, we'll know from what they've said from 7.1.5 that it's going to be some decent amount of content. Then would come, I suppose, 7.3. Now, they did say there's going to be 3 raid tiers. We knew the Tomb of Sargeras, although it was only announced today, we knew the Tomb of Sargeras would be the second tier after Nighthold. So the third tier, and I'd talked a little bit about this before, not too much, I don't like to speculate too much, was going to have to be one of two things. Either it was going to be related to the next expansion, because they've done that in previous expansions, or, which I would have liked, by the way, or we're going to take the fight to the Legion. And as Ion Hazzikostas noted, if you've been listening to Illidan, all he bangs on about is the fact that we're never going to win by just defending ourselves. We have to go on the attack. We also had the scenario in the Exodar with Valen saying, pack up, we're off to Argus. So there were no details given, but we were pretty much told that where we're off to next is Argus, to actually battle the Legion directly, to go on the offensive. So that is what is coming in Legion. That is basically Legion, not completely fleshed out. We haven't had the details, but that is the path for Legion now. laid bare so that we know what's coming now. And yes, though, I'm sure there'll be some really interesting questions in the Q&A tomorrow. And as I said, on Sunday, 7 p.m. UK time, that is, I am going to do a stream where we'll go through some of these issues. After the Q&A, I'll get some notes and we'll hopefully be able to discuss those. So if you'd like me to talk about those, then join me for that. Remember, I did say if you want to ask Ret, I'll do a specific Ret Q&A again. We only just did one last week, but I'll do another one in a couple of weeks' time anyway. Once Trial of Valor sort of been properly underway. And yeah, I think there'll be lots to talk about just in terms of what we've been discussing today. So hopefully you found that interesting. If you did, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe and share. I'll be going through some of these in more detail in their own separate videos throughout the next week. And until next time, I'll see you later.